Dear Congressman Scott, we the people, at least those of us with the ability to engage in critical thinking and common sense, and there are far more than the government and their NSA spies can imagine, have had enough. We no longer listen to mainstream media for our news. We assume, based on what we already know to be true, that the moment one of our elected so-called leaders opens their mouths in front of the cameras, they are lying. Some small lies, others on a massive scale. We watch as the hearings on the IRS scandal take place and find ourselves yelling at the screen when the obvious questions, which would reveal at least part of the truth, are not even asked. We watch the same individuals play act at righteous indignation, and others dig their heels in to oppose any connecting of the dots leading to the White House. While some, not many, are convinced Congress is trying to get at the truth, the rest of us appreciate what we're actually witnessing. An increasingly amateur sideshow designed to placate and distract. That fact cannot be missed when those appearing to be the champions of truth and the voice of the people take stands and cast votes behind the scenes on legislative measures in direct opposition to the interests of the people and this nation. In short, Mr. Scott, our so-called representatives in Washington, D.C., and those who serve as the heads of state in our various states and union are speaking out of both sides of their mouths. Do we think that all of you were well aware of exactly what you were getting yourselves into when we sent you there? No. But we do know that only a bona fide moron could be there since 2010 and fail to recognize the true nature of the dismally corrupt and totally controlled, multifaceted criminal cabal posing as the legitimate government of our constitutional republic. Every time one of you refer to our great nation as a democracy, we want to vomit, because we know that you know the true meaning and purpose of that word, and why it is being drummed into the heads of American citizens and the people of the rest of the world. Regardless of the long-term indoctrination through the education plan laid out by the Carnegie Institute and others in 1910, there are literally millions of us who escaped the intention of government-run public education. We have not been sufficiently brainwashed through television programming in Hollywood to be silenced or herded with the rest of the sheep. We've had that figured out since the 50s. We know the true purpose of Islam, and indeed all religions, and why the jihadist Muslim Brotherhood are firmly ensconced in the White House. We do see what's going on in all countries which failed to stop infiltration of that into their societies. We are cognizant of a directly aimed insult to our intelligence with fake explanations for the massive number of foreign troops on our soil. We get the symbolic, sick, and twisted purpose of the displays in the Denver airport. We understand the English words and their meanings on the Georgia Guidestones. We're well aware of the reason our government refuses to close and secure our borders. We don't participate in the American healthcare system, nor will we. We don't drink the water where it's fluoridated, nor will we subject our children to mercury-laden vaccines. We are fully capable of critical thinking, research, study, common sense, and discernment. We are not fooled for a moment by the now comical antics from the halls of Congress, or the outlandishly absurd actions masquerading as constitutional decision-making in our Supreme Court. We certainly aren't fooled by the clear and present danger presented by a man whose only provided credential has been proven unequivocally to be a 100% forgery. There are many millions of us who are immune to the mind control measures used on the masses, far too many for this New World Order plan to succeed. From the Majestic 12 and Project Blue Book to Agenda 21, Rex 84, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, the Patriot Act, the NDAA, the NSA, DHS, CIA, and the militarization of our so-called law enforcement agencies, we remain on top of things. We know it has been many decades, if not longer, since a legitimate national election has taken place. We know this nation was doomed the moment we chose to turn a deaf ear to our founders and allowed ourselves to become a two-party system, both sides owned and operated by the same self-appointed elite criminals. We absolutely understand the completely fraudulent nature of our monetary system, based on nothing but thin air, for the purpose of enslaving the people of this country, and indeed the entire globe, by debt to the banksters, rulers for profit and control. And we are fully prepared for the day it finally collapses, as all Ponzi scams eventually do. If and when we do tune in to mainstream media, it's only to keep a constant vigil on what it is the government would rather we pay attention to, and then we continue digging, because we know that anything in the front and center on the news, repeated over and over ad nauseum, is only there to divert our attention from something far greater and infinitely more dangerous and damaging. It isn't working, Mr. Scott, and each and every day Congress doubles down on its attempts to sweep the real issues under the rug, the scandals out the door, throw the baby out with the bathwater, or perform lavish plays designed to fool the people into thinking they are serious about getting at the truth, any truth. We, the people, are only more certain that we've been had. Our intelligence is assaulted by a proven impostor put into his position for the purpose of destroying the greatest experiment in human governance since the dawn of time, when he proclaims over the airwaves and uses his puppets to echo his words that we are being distracted by phony scandals. Our souls, black, white, red, and yellow, cry out in pain when we see all progress we've made as a society and a nation to view each other as equal beings and Americans, destroyed by race baiters and division profiteers like Sharpton, Jackson, and members of Congress fawning at the feet of a fraud in a suit with a golf club and a teleprompter. I have attempted on multiple occasions to engage you, Mr. Scott, on the subject of Agenda 21. Once even in person when you visited my town. You dodged the issue then, and have continued to do so since you were sent to Washington. There is not 1 ounce of credibility in the idea that you don't know what it is. I provided you with all of that information myself more than once. I was active in the effort to get you elected when I was asked to do some background research on all of the candidates in 2010 by my local Tea Party chapter. I don't participate much in the daily workings of the Tea Party because, sadly, most of them are still of the mindset that the Republicans are a lesser evil, when in fact, their very sneaky nature makes them exponentially more dangerous than the juvenile Democrats, socialist progressives, who can't control their zippers, let alone their mouths. So here we are in 2013, with a collapsing economy, millions of people robbed of their homes, jobs, and livelihoods, individuals attacked by rogue cops, out-of-control government agencies, school children as young as 7 being arrested for actions they aren't even old enough yet to understand, children kidnapped into the system simply for having parents concerned enough to try to protect them from the agenda, and a so-called president who thinks he can afford himself the power to target and kill American citizens at will. And what is Congress doing? Don't answer that. Instead, I'll tell you what we the people see. We see more than 500 men and women scrambling to cover their asses. That's what we see. We see very real scandals. Extortion 17, Benghazi, IRS, NSA, AP, purchased representation, a forged birth certificate, fake social security number, falsified draft card, massive voter fraud, insider trading, weaponized weather control, sloppy false flag events like Sandy Hook in Boston. a legislative body affording themselves unconstitutional perks and protections from the unlawful, disingenuous legislation they foist upon the people at the behest of their corporate handlers. And let's not overlook Snowden, Manning, Lindauer, Hastings, Breitbart, and so many others. We're not stupid. We're not sheep. We're not indoctrinated. What we are is wide-awake Americans, fully aware of the truth of what we can see with our own eyes, hear with our own ears, and interpret using good old-fashioned common sense and intellect. Here's what we expect to see. If you and your congressional colleagues actually think you have a tinker's chance in hell of not being held fully and equally accountable for the blatant crimes against we the people and the people of the many countries destroyed in our name without our consent. Full disclosure pursuant to the citizens' disclosure hearings. Full disclosure of the massive number of hidden technologies and Tesla's patents kept from the people since World War II and the events of 1947. A complete and screeching halt to all transhumanism efforts. Full disclosure on who specifically gave the orders to stand down on the night of the Benghazi attacks, to include who specifically has been calling the shots on the cover-up and public narrative ever since. Who, if anybody, was killed and dumped in the ocean in an attempt to falsely give the imposter credit for killing bin Laden, a man who had been dead for quite a few years. We really are just not that stupid. Who gave the order to put SEAL Team 6 on a broken-down, refitted, unfit-for-combat Chinook helicopter after making sure the Taliban knew it was coming and sending them into a major hot zone and to their deaths? And who is giving the order to lie and threaten to the parents of those brave men who gave their lives to cover a lie? Who gave the orders to target conservative groups by the IRS? Again, we know not a single one of those groups have been contacted by any investigators since the scandal broke. Who gave the order to violate the constitutionally protected rights of the AP journalist and James Rosen? Who is giving the orders to ramp up the chemtrails, hide GMO content in food marketed to the American people, and assault our minds and body with the smart meters? That'll do for a start, and to be perfectly honest, we already know who. But until you, the members of Congress, come clean, do the jobs you were sent there to do in the way you are morally and legally obliged to do it, we will assume each and every one of you are guilty and fully complicit. In the end, we will not excuse or forgive any with impotent excuses, any who speak to us with false promises and then stab us in the back with their votes, any who refuse to disclose the real intent of false flags designed to promote gun confiscations and the reasons for them. We will not accept that you were threatened or coerced into acting dishonorably or criminally. Why? Because we know that the number of people in this nation and the entire globe outnumber the criminal elite by at least 1,000,000 to 1. And we, unlike the weasels we sent to represent us, would stand up in defense and protection of any who would find the intestinal fortitude to come clean with us and honor the trust we placed in them. We are not dangerous enemies our own government would like the world to think we are. We are honorable men and women, patriots to our country, who love the values our nation was founded on and the freedom and liberty we are born with and have a God-given right to as much as the lowly groundhog. How dare you people stand by silent, or even worse, spout meaningless platitudes, while those of us still able to think are labeled by an unconstitutional entity like the Department of Homeland Security as domestic terrorists? How dare you go along with the concept of continuity of governance designed to protect the guilty and totally in opposition to the organic Constitution for the United States, while the people are victimized for the profit and power of the twisted few? Above all, since when and whose decision was it to change the word patriot into a four-letter word? All of you had better thank your lucky stars that the men and women at rest in Arlington National Cemetery cannot rise again. It's time for truth, Congressman, real truth, and nothing less will do. I'm just a grandma on a porch in southern Georgia with a talent for putting words on paper. But I speak for many millions of good, intelligent, honorable Americans who are not going to tolerate much more. Be careful what you present as truth to we the people. We know far more than we reveal at any given point in time, and we have learned the hard way how to recognize a lie, an agenda, an excuse, or propaganda. After all, we've been taught by the masters, and we are good students. We just didn't allow ourselves to buy the magic beans instead of keeping the reliable cow. We the people accept our responsibility, our portion of the blame for what we face as a nation. We know we sent you into the viper's nest, and we are ready to suffer the consequences of our apathy and utter failure to engage in our duty to those we elect to represent us by providing oversight and engaging in equal participation. That said, it is time all in Congress get the message. Either stand with the people or bow to the criminal bosses. But in the end, your butts can only be covered by open and willing confession, honorable actions, and forgiveness, which we the people are not only willing to grant, but anxiously awaiting the opportunity to bestow. As the impostor has so often said, the only people who lie are those with something to hide. If you can answer this letter with truth and honor, please do. If you can only answer this letter with hollow, repetitive platitudes, empty promises, or denials, then please afford me the respect I deserve, and don't answer at all. In closing, the one thing we the people will not do is react in the way we are being set up and expected to. We will not riot, target each other, engage in massive civil unrest, or start shooting people like ducks in a pond when the inevitable collapse finally ensues. Oh, sure, there will be mindless entitlement junkies in the inner cities who will act like the trained monkeys they've allowed themselves to become. They'll throw things, set things on fire, scream, cry, demand their freebies, and so on. The rest of the nation, the silent majority, will not engage in such juvenile behavior. We will not provide the excuse for national martial law, and we will not engage in a second civil war against each other. What we will do is use our considerable intellect, our national pride, our mutual respect for one another in times of crisis, to put our massive numbers of heads together and stand side by side as what we are, Americans, a free and independent people. The days of deceit, manipulation, and distraction by an overblown, arrogant, despicable, and fraudulent government are at an end. We are the answer.